Here in Central Florida, you can't grow strawberries through the summer. Can you? I figured out a way to get the plants to not only survive over the summer, but they put out pups. And then you end up with more berry plants than what you started out with. And those berry plants will then continue to give strawberries. I finally figured it out. So I'll share with you a couple of things that didn't work, and then I'll show you what I'm doing now that does work.
All I have not provided.
The first time I tried to get my strawberries to last over the summer so that I wouldn't have to buy them again in the fall, well, I dug them up and I planted them in the shade of a building. And that didn't work. They just got too hot and dried up anyway. The next thing I did is, well, I dug them up and I put them in the freezer. I figured if the plants up north can make it through the winter and then they come back in the spring, well, why not try to mimic that? Well, those plants died too. A couple of years ago, I bought 50 plants from Ison's Nursery. They have no idea I'm promoting them in this video, but that's where I get my plants. So I bought the variety Chandler. I prefer Sweet Charlie's, but I decided I'd try Chandler's, and that's what I have now growing in my strawberry bed, nestled in amongst my pineapples, and it works. So the first year I experimented, I put 25 plants in this bed, and I put 25 plants in some barrels on the south side of my home, thinking that the warmth from those barrels will keep those berries from getting frozen in the winter. Well, it didn't seem to matter. Both of them, both out here and also on the side of the building, they did make it through the winter. But as the spring turned into summer, the ones in the barrels just started to die. Whereas these, I only lost 1 or 2 plants. So I dug the ones up in my barrels and I replanted them here, and most of them lived. So here's what my conclusion is. First of all, I'm standing under the canopy of a large oak tree. These plants only get full sunlight starting around mid-afternoon until the sun sets to the west that way. So I think a lot of it has to do with, for some reason, pineapples and the strawberries are doing great with partial shade, and I guess the oak tree just keeps them from the frost and protects them from the freeze to a certain degree. If we were to ever get down into the 20s, I would cover them. But up until about 30 degrees, it's okay, because typically here in Central Florida, that freeze only lasts for a very few hours. So far, I've not had to cover them because we have not had that hard of a freeze, but I would cover them if we did. Years ago, when I was homeschooling my kids, I discovered a lovely little book called Strawberry Girl by Lois Linsky. It's a historical fiction book that teaches kids what life was like here in Central Florida about 100 years ago. And Strawberry Girl, well, their family grew strawberries. And she coined a little phrase that made a lot of sense to me. Here in Florida, we have a lot of pine trees, and so we can harvest pine needles and use them as mulch. I've done it for years. She called pine needles pine straw, and they mulched their strawberries with pine straw. And according to that little book, whether this is true or not, I don't know, but that's why strawberries are called strawberries. We mulch them with pine straw. I would imagine that further up north, where there's not the pine trees that we have, maybe they use straw. I don't know. I've been dodging rain for the last couple of days, so The first part here was done a couple of days ago, and now the bed is ready. So I'll show you what I've done up to this point, and then I'll come back and I'll show you what I'm going to do to finish up. Pardon my appearance, I've been hard at work, and I thought, you know, I really should share this with you. Now that I've got the fertilizer and the manure worked in around the plants, the next thing I'm going to do is guide these new baby plants into an area where they're going to actually take root. Right now, this poor plant has sent out 1, 2, 3 plants from this side, and not all of them have rooted. Let's see, I don't want to disturb the roots too much, so I'm going to dig this up. Okay. So look, we've got 1, 2, 3 babies off of this one plant. We've got some good roots going right here, but I'm going to direct them where I want them to grow, and I'm not going to cut them off the parent plant. It's just the way I did it last year. It worked, and I'm afraid to do it any differently at this stage. I don't think, especially this one has no roots. It's just starting to have roots. And this one didn't get established, even though it was close. This one found some dirt, and it started getting some roots. So the reason why these at the end are still living is because they're still connected to the parent plant. So I'll just dig a little bit. You don't want to bury them too deep. And just mash the dirt up around them to encourage them to make their new home right there. Okay, so this is the middle one I was showing you that has the good roots. I'm going to plant it right here. Not too deep. You see, this is the crown here. Let me pull that back out there. You don't want to bury this part right here. Only the roots. But yet you want the roots to definitely be deep enough where they can reach the moisture and the nutrients that I just put in there. So you got to be careful not to plant them too deeply. Now I'm going to plant this guy not far from it, right here, and just encourage it. Just a little bit. Again, you don't want to plant them too deep. Now if this one comes back up, that's okay. I'll be checking on these plants, you know, over the next couple of months to make sure that all these new little babies are finding a new home. Pretty soon, I believe that this whole area will be covered with baby plants, because this mama plant right here is doing really, really well. I just picked a berry off of it too. The next thing I'm going to do, it's a pain, but I think it's really, really necessary to take these dead leaves off. I know when you first plant them, it's important to take the dead leaves off as they die off, which happens a lot when you put new plants in. So let me show you what's going on underneath. So we've got quite a few dead leaves in here. Try not to cut any of the good ones. Don't want to uproot what I just did with my baby plant. So just be careful. See, there's more dead ones in here. Don't cut off any of your new leaders to your new plants here. They call them pups. I'll just leave that to go and see what happens. Now, you know, these little guys right here, they really don't make that good of a berry. So if you want the plant to put more energy toward the pups, you can go ahead and cut those off. Like this one, see here? That's not going to do anything. So when they're really, really tiny like this, and they haven't started their roots, just put some dirt around the leader to kind of hold them in place, and they'll find a place to put their roots. You really don't want to try to plant something that little. You'll probably bury it too deep. These plants have grown even more pups since I was out here just 2 days ago. The rain has kept me from coming out, but as you see, the plants are healthy. Look, we even have a bloom, and this is typical of the size berry that you get through the summer. Now, I'm going to clip this off, and I'll clip off the bloom just to encourage this plant to go ahead. Look, here's another one. I want it to go ahead and make some pups. So you might be concerned that if I'm putting pine straw or pine needles around the plants, well, isn't that going to turn my soil to acidic? Well, first of all, my soil is alkaline. If that were true, I would welcome that. But it's not true. And as you see here, I've got oak leaves down in here too. It does not change the pH of your soil. All it does is put a nice protective layer around your plants. And when they do end up making strawberries, then you've got, this is a demonstration here, they're going to be on the actual pine straw so that they're not sitting in the soil. And here in Florida, it's typical for our soil to be damp. And so, you know, this is actually a good thing to put pine straw, or maybe in your case, you'll put just plain old straw around your berries. The farmers around here will use plastic to keep the berries off the soil. I don't use plastic in my garden. And besides, pine needles are free, and they work great. They break down over time, and they add nutrients back into the soil. So I'm avoiding all the little babies that are coming out from the runners, and let them get established before I try to put the mulch up around them too close. So here's what it looks like when you first put down your pine needles. They will settle down and make a nice little bed. But I want to show you up close how I've tried to avoid the little pups that are coming up. So here's a plant that I transplanted right here. This is a pup. These are onions that I'm growing. Here's another little pup that's growing. So I just leave that open until they're established, and then I'll put, oh, this is actually a pup that's trying to get established. So I'm going to bury that little leader so that it can find its own home in the soil here. So I leave that open just so that they don't get stuck on the top of the pine needles, because they can't root in the pine needles. They really and truly need to be down into the soil. And yes, onions grow really well with pineapples and strawberries. This here is the bottom of an onion that I planted, and here's an example of some green onions that I replanted. And I just pulled up some regular onions that I had planted. Thank you so much for your valuable time. Green thumbs up, subscribe, turn on your bell notifications.